There are always going to be people who want to make a bigger out of argument or take a step to where an argument doesn't actually belong. And I think that's what happens oftentimes with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's been very good. Far better than I thought he'd be as a pro quarterback. I think part of it is they found the perfect fit for him. And he went from a 58% completion passer to a 66 and 64 in his next 2 years completion. Part of it is the offense they ran. They got the big tight ends. He doesn't throw outside the numbers well, so they didn't throw it outside the numbers. And they play fast. They run it a lot. He was 13-2 as a starter 2 years ago. Last year, 11-4 as a starter in 15 games. And had a comeback playoff win as well. That's pretty good stuff. So where are we with Lamar Jackson? It started with Jeremy Fowler, who was like, look, this is a big year because will the NFL, catch up to him? Here was the response from Lamar Jackson in regards to the NFL catching up to him.
Ball, we gonna see, but I doubt it, dude. I doubt it. I strongly doubt it. We gonna play ball.
Nobody said he wasn't going to play ball. I think part of it is all we can work on is what we've seen before. Right? That's it. That's the only thing we can go by is what we have all kind of collectively seen before. And what we've seen before is frankly this kind of deal where you have a couple of years of success and then the league makes you do things you're not comfortable doing. They don't let you run the football as often as he's wanted to run the football. When he started, midway through his rookie year, people didn't have a book on him. Then the second year with him as a starter, they just took off and they exploded. They built the whole thing around him. Now, the challenge is that when you're going up against a team like the Ravens, the way in which your defense is constructed is not really similar to the way it was previously constructed, Like, that's not how you stop most offenses in the NFL. They don't look like that. They're not as run heavy. They're not as big. They're not playing as much kind of downhill. I mean, think about it. The stretch run game, the zone blocking scheme, like those have traditionally far smaller offensive linemen, smaller, more agile, more active offensive linemen. That's what happens. But somehow we've gotten to this place where if you're critical in any way of Lamar Jackson, you're doubting Lamar Jackson. If you're saying that teams are going to adjust, you're like, wait, what? Greg Roman style has like a 2.5-year lifespan. And then people figure it out. Maybe Lamar is so good at what he's doing, it doesn't matter. It's a possibility. Maybe Lamar can, because he had a true offseason, evolve some as a thrower. It's possible. Saw Josh Allen evolve a ton. Or maybe this is as good as it gets. Luckily, he hasn't been hurt yet. The league has struggled to catch up to him. And the offense is completely tailored to him. And yes, when they get behind, it's been tough, but they had a comeback win for a playoff win. So I think Lamar is one of those guys that you don't want to bet against because he does use what he deems to be haters as rocket fuel for him, and I think the Ravens do as well. But the reality is you have several years to play now. You can see what works, what doesn't work, and if you have the personnel, you can beat the Ravens. You can beat Lamar Jackson. There will be games they will turn it over. They will put it on the turf. It is not an immovable object. It's just very difficult, and you better not get behind. You better have a really good game plan, and you can't give many, you just can't give up deep balls to Hollywood Brown, right? Keep everything in front of you, especially outside the numbers, and keep him in the pocket. I think it's a reasonable discussion to have if the league will catch up to him, if the league will figure him out. But it's really hard to have a reasonable discussion about Lamar Jackson because for whatever reason, he's a guy who's who's tinged in the if you say anything negative, somehow there's a racial implication. Like, that couldn't be further from the truth. We are at, in case you haven't figured it out yet, the NFL is past race at quarterback. I've tried to express it to people, but here's the easiest way to do so. Okay? Here's the easiest way. You ready? Okay. Let's say Cam Newton's a starting quarterback in New England. Okay? So in the AFC East, you would have one black starting quarterback, one Samoan. Okay? In the AFC North, you would have one black quarterback, that being Lamar Jackson. In the AFC South, like Deshaun Watson's not going to play, but if he played, he'd be the starting quarterback. You'd have one in the AFC South. In the AFC West, you'd have two, because Teddy Bridgewater was named starting quarterback, Denver and Kansas City. In the NFC East, Philadelphia and Dallas. In the NFC North, you have none until Justin Fields eventually becomes the starting quarterback. In the NFC South, you'll likely have Jameis Winston. In the NFC West, you will have 1, 2, and then Trey Lance would be 3. Eventually, whether it's this year or next year, be the starting quarterback with Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson. So I would say, without doing the math, I'm going to go we're at like 40% starting quarterbacks are black or Samoan. So we're past that. But what we're not past is whether or not quarterbacks that are run threats as well as pass threats, whether they can stay healthy. Whether or not this offense that Greg Roman has got exposed when he was in Buffalo, had a shelf life in San Francisco, doesn't have a shelf life here. And the same thing goes for the style of quarterback. Right? From Jake Locker to Cordell Stewart to Vince Young to Tim Tebow. And, of course, Lamar is the best of all of those guys. He's the only MVP of all those guys. But it is a realistic and very fair question to go like, hey, now they got 3 years of book on him. Had they been able to put together rosters, put together defenses, put together game plans, which limit what he does best?